there was a wood mouse, and her name was Mrs.
Tittlemouse.
Mrs. Tittlemouse.
I can say it fast.
Okay.
Mrs. Tittlemouse.
Well, that's not really fast, is it?
Mrs. Tittlemouse.
Mrs. Tittlemouse. Can you do it quicker than that?
Mrs. Tittlemouse.
Mrs. Tittlemouse. She lived in a bank under a hedge.
What's a hedge?
Hedge is like a squashed down tree. Squashed down tree. Such a funny house. There were yards and yards of sandy passages leading to storerooms and nut cellars and seed cellars, all amongst the roots of the hedge. Oh, she's gone to sleep. Oh, night night. There was a kitchen, a parlour, a pantry, and a larder. Also,
a bed.
And a bed, correct. Also, there was Mrs. Tittlemouse's bedroom, where she slept in a little box
Mrs. Tittlemouse.
bed. You're going to have to say it quicker than that.
Mrs. Tittlemouse.
Okay. You need to practice.
Mrs. Tittlemouse.
Not just now, though. Mrs. Tittlemouse was a most terribly tidy, particular little mouse, always sweeping and dusting the soft,
Mommy,
sandy
I'm
floors.
asleep already.
Oh, night night. Okay, at the end.
No, not the end.
Sometimes a beetle lost its way in the passages. Sha, sha, little dirty feet, said Mrs. Tittlemouse, clattering her dustpan. I think it's meant to be shoo, little dirty feet. But look, it's S-H-U-H. It should be. Is that shoo? It should be S-H-U-O-O. Should be shoo. That's more like sha, which doesn't make any sense. What's your favourite?
Ladybird.
I love ladybirds. And one day a little old woman ran up and down in a red spotty cloak. I know you were frightened of it, weren't you? Why? Why? Lovely ladybirds.
Bad ladybird.
No, not at all. And one day a little old woman ran up and down in a red spotty cloak. Your house is on fire, Mother Ladybird. Fly away home to your children.
That's not very nice.
Another day.
That's
I think
not
she was
fair.
warming. No, she was helping her, I think. Another day, a big fat spider came in to shelter from the rain. Beg pardon, is this not Miss Muffet's? Go away, you bold,
What's
bad
Miss
spider. That's another nursery rhyme. That's another story. Little Miss Muffet sat in a tuffet, eating her curds and whey.
Going away, eating his head.
Not eating his head. That's where you get this from. Leaving ends of cobweb all over my nice clean house. She bundled the spider out at a window. He let himself down the hedge with a long, thin bit of string.
You know what's that? It's a net so you can catch. So you hold the bit and back, then you scoop it in.
You scoop up the fly. Is that for the catching flies?
Yes.
Yes.
And butterflies.
Butterfly. Oh dear, that's a shame, isn't it? Maybe mosquitoes. And mosquitoes? Yeah.
Sometimes.
What about rhinoceroses?
Sometimes ladybirds.
Do they catch rhinoceroses?
Sometimes bees.
Do they catch rhinoceroses?
Daddy.
I need to know this.
No.
No, okay. Why?
Because they're too big.
Oh, okay. Spiders are too big.
No.
Oh, right. Uh-huh.
Daddy.
Yes.
Do you know?
Maybe.
Wasps and bees.
Yes.
And
Yes.
ladybugs
Yes.
can go in our nose and our mouth.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
And
we
what do you
don't-
do? What do you do? Is that why you pick your nose? Is that trying to get a ladybird out?
Sometimes they go in our nose and our
Yeah,
mouth.
okay.
because We open them.
Okay.
Oh, my
Oh,
mouth.
ropen. Ropen.
Then they go in our nose.
Right. Okay. Okay. How do you know this? Who told you this?
No one.
No one. Did you just discover? Well, you're clever. You're a scientist. You're going to be some sort of a botanist or a something like that. No?
What is that?
A botanist.
Yes.
It's a scientist for bottoms. About plants. Botanist. It's a
No!
scientist that studies plants.
Is
And
the
there's a lot of
story
plants.
finished yet?
No, not yet. Mrs. Tittlemouse went on her way to a distant storeroom to fetch cherry stones and thistledown seed for dinner. All along the passage she sniffed, and looked at the floor. I smell a smell of honey. It doesn't sound very much like a Mrs. Tittlemouse, does it? I smell a smell of honey. Is it the cowslips outside in the hedge? I am sure I can see the marks of little dirty feet.
What's dirty feet?
Oh, it looks like a bee. Look. Suddenly, round a corner, she met Babbitty Bumble. Zzz, bizz, bizz, said the bumblebee. Mrs. Tittlemouse looked at her severely. Is that what they say? I thought they say buzz, buzz. Mrs. Tittlemouse looked at her severely. She wished that she had a broom.
It's bee.
Right. Good day, Babbitty Bumble. I should be glad to buy some beeswax. But what are you doing down here? Why do you always come in a window and say zzz, bizz, bizz? Mrs. Tittlemouse began to get cross. She's a funny old thing, isn't she, Mrs. Tittlemouse? I know. Zzz, whiz, whiz, replied Babbitty Bumble in a peevish squeak. She sidled down a passage and disappeared into a storeroom, which had been used for acorns. Mrs. Tittlemouse had eaten the acorns before Christmas. The storeroom ought to have been empty, but it was full of untidy dry moss.
When is it going to be Christmas?
In Christmas time. Mrs. Tittlemouse began to pull out the moss. End of the year, when it's cold again. Mrs. Tittlemouse began to pull out the moss. 3 or 4 other bees put their heads out and buzzed fiercely. I am not in the habit of letting lodgings. This is an intrusion, said Mrs. Tittlemouse. I will have them turned out. Buzz, buzz, buzz. I wonder who would help me. Bizz, whiz, whiz. I will not have Mr. Jackson. He never wipes his feet. This makes no sense to me, this story. This story makes no sense to me. Mrs. Tittlemouse decided to leave the bees till after dinner. When she got back to the parlour, she heard someone coughing in a fat voice, and there sat Mr. Jackson himself.
Who's Mr. Jackson?
Was it Michael Jackson, do you think?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's I like your answer.
Jackson.
He was sitting all over a small rocking chair.
My friend's called Jackson.
I do know that, yes. Twiddling his thumbs and smiling, with his feet on the fender. He lived in a drain below the hedge in a very dirty, wet ditch. Doesn't sound like Michael Jackson, I have to say.
Like Jackson.
How